Hey there. We've all heard about things like how some big raw material is taken and then processed to give you some particular product, right? Well, have you ever wondered how exactly that thing is processed? Well, essentially, it can be brought down to three types of processes. One is forming, where you just take some raw material and then you mold it into some particular product. Or the other one is joining, where you just take multiple materials and then join them together. And the third one is removal, where you have one big chunk where you carve it out into some design or a product. And I wanted to try these things out practically, so here's how that went. Today I'm heading to the central workshop at IIT Madras just to show you how material is processed. And first off, it is foundry. The most basic way by which metal is shaped into a desired product is by casting molten metal into a mold, also called a die, letting it cool down and then removing the product out to finish it. This process is called casting or molding. Now, there are various types of casting, and today we're going to do sand casting. First, a type of sand called green sand is taken and put into this machine called the sand muller, mixed with a binder, bonding material and an adhesive, and also some water for a few minutes so that the sand can form a strong mold. And once the sand mixture starts to look like this, we stop the muller and collect the sand to start making the mold. We start off with a container called the flask that holds the sand. We take a model of the product that we wish to make, called the pattern, and keep it in the middle so that it lies in the middle of the mold. A coat of powder is first applied to prevent the sand from sticking to the flat table. And then a coat of fine sand is applied with the help of a sieve to make sure there are no large cavities where the molten metal could seep through, which would make it harder to finish. From now, it's just basically adding 3 layers of sand over another and ramming them down to make the mold hard. After the first layer above the fine sand, we use the wooden rammer to tighten the sand. And then with this, called the hook rammer, which is used for the second layer that forms most of the mold. So to make sure that this layer is tight enough, the surface area of this rammer has been made lesser so that a greater pressure is applied for the given amount of manual force. And then for the last layer, we use what is called a butt rammer that has a flat surface, so it's easier for us to level out the mold with this leveler in the end. Now, holes are made into the mold, not too deep, in order to let the gases and even the moisture in the sand escape as vapor when the hot metal is poured in. For the second flask, it's clamped onto the first one, and 2 wooden sticks are kept to make tunnel-like structures in the mold, one for the metal to enter, called the runner, and the other for excess metal to rise up more closer to the pattern, called the riser. The purpose of a riser is to first let the air inside the cavity escape when the space inside the cavity is being occupied by a metal, and also to collect extra material so that when the metal cools down, this extra metal compensates for the shrinking of the metal inside the cavity. The same process is then carried out to finish the second flask, and finally we have the mold. After that's done, we make these basins, one next to the runner for the metal to be poured and the impurities to settle down, and the other around the riser for the excess metal to get collected. And in the interior of the mold, we make these pathways for the metal to run into the cavity. Now that the mold is done, it's time to fill it up with some hot metal. The metal we're using here is aluminum, which has a melting point of 660.32 degrees Celsius. It's heated in this furnace to temperatures of about 1000 degrees Celsius, well beyond its melting point. So now the molten metal is carefully poured into this mold until the excess metal starts to rise up along the riser. Now we're going to just let this cool for a while and come back later.
Cool down.
So we'll let the mold settle, and the metal's been cooling down for about 20 to 30 minutes. After removing the product, you can see that the surface might not be as smooth as you wanted it. Well, that's because of the size of the sand grains. The finishing touches, however, can be done later on in the metal removing process. But if you really aren't happy with your product, well, the main advantage of sand casting is that it lets you use both the sand as well as the metal by putting the sand back in the miller again and the metal back into the furnace to use it another time. And that is basically how my work at Foundry went. But I've got some videos coming up on some really cool stuff that I got to do at joining and removal processes. So to get notified when I upload those videos, you could just click that subscribe button to stay tuned for the next video. And I will see you there.